The thing is, this is all running locally on this machine, so I could turn off internet access, blah, 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 things like that, and it would still function just as this is. For today's video, we're going to be taking a look at an AI-powered coding assistant called Void. Now, this is actually something that has been around for a while, but I did just recently become aware of it once again thanks to an AI newsletter that I follow, which I think was today's or yesterday's kind of article had this in something of the quick links. So with that, I want to take a look at it, and I actually want to go through and just kind of walk through the installation steps and then go ahead and test it using Ollama, of course, with some local models. So one of the cool things about this, and what is quite prominently displayed on the Void website right here, is that this is an open source cursor alternative where you can write code with the best AI tools, retain full control over your data. So in the scope of my channel and what I like to do, you can actually go ahead and use local models with this, which for today we will be using through Ollama. Really, the GitHub repository for this is quite barren in terms of the actual README section, but basically you can go ahead and just hop on over to the website and begin the download process, which is what we're going to do right now. Before we do that, quick note, and what I want to mention is this is Apache 2.0, which is always nice to see, as that is a very permissive and highly well-regarded open source license, I suppose one could say. With that, this is currently available for Mac and Windows. There does not seem to be any Linux support right now, which obviously is a downside, especially as someone who uses Linux predominantly for all of the AI related things that I do. But I figure that perhaps you get to see me enraged on camera and having to use Windows 11. So with that, we'll just go ahead and begin the download process. Now, in order to do that, we will click this big blue download Void button and see what happens. We will be brought to a page here where we can kind of pick which download will suit our specific system, which for me right now is Windows. Once we do that, it will go ahead and download the exe, which we can then carelessly run. No, I'm kidding. But again, always, exercise caution when you're downloading things onto a system. After thwarting off a stroke having to uninstall some bloatware on a new system, we now are met with the downloaded exe, which we can go ahead and now run. Okay, so this is actually good that this happened, even though it frustrates me, because in the GitHub issues for Void, someone had actually mentioned that this gets flagged as a virus by certain things, and one of the contributors mentioned that it's because they didn't sign the app or something like that. So just to kind of make note of that, if this is something you encounter, which may not necessarily be the same reason that issue popped up, it is just something to be expected kind of if you're using this on Windows, which you 50-50 perhaps. So I'm just going to click run anyway. So we basically are met with our setup here. If you want to read the agreement, you can. From that, we will just kind of go ahead and follow through the steps right here. I will allow it to create a desktop icon in the other settings. Interesting. So you can actually add open with Void, just basically if you want a script or something like that to be opened with this IDE, you can go ahead and do that. Add to path, we will do register Void as an editor. Yeah. All right. I'm going to leave all of these in the default of settings that they had there, and then we will just go ahead and click install, which I can't imagine will take very long, as this is a fork of VS Code, so it will have some similarities in terms of VS Code like install processes, if you will. And now that the installation has completed, I am just going to allow it to launch Void now, and we will go ahead and just get our first look at this. I don't actually have any scripts or anything downloaded on this system that I will actually use to kind of test this, so I will go ahead and do that following the conclusion of just our first look at this. Welcome to Void. I do like the kind of cube thing there. I think it's pretty cool. It reminds me of the NEXT station, like the thing Steve Jobs made when he left Apple for a while. Sorry, that was quite a tangent probably. So as we can see right here, these are our options to actually hook up an AI or LLM to this, where basically we can do free, so Gemini or Open Router, paid, obviously Anthropic, OpenAI, DeepSeek, Grok, Mistral, and a bunch of other things. Local, now this is quite cool because not only is there Ollama, but there is VLLM as well and LM Studio. Truthfully, I've heard some difficulties in folks actually trying to get VLLM working with Windows. I don't really use Windows, so I'm not sure what the current state of that is, but I figure I will just kind of point that out. And in addition to this, we have Cloud Other, where you can do a Vertex AI or Azure or any OpenAI compatible endpoint basically right here. So with that, we are just going to hop back to the local tab right here, and I am using Ollama. Now, fortunately, it does seem to be running properly right here. So I currently on this system have Qwen3-32B and Gemma3-27B. I will likely first and foremost test this with Qwen3-32B. So hide from, okay, I guess I'll keep both of these. So we'll be able to see what the behavior is when there are two models available on the system. With that, I will click next. I don't have anything to transfer over, but that is cool that you can transfer from Cursor or Windsurf or other things that may have been kind of acquired by big data companies. All right, enter the void. Very cool. So we have a chat right here in the right hand side pane. Basically, okay, cool. So there's an agent. Now this is actually really cool and something that I'm very happy to see. This thinking toggle right here is great because Qwen3, at least this specific, the 32 billion parameter model of Qwen3 here is actually a thinking model, but you can toggle the thinking on and off. So basically by the switch of a button, you can either allow it to think or disable that thinking functionality, which if you use these models for coding use cases, the thinking is cool, but it can oftentimes become quite taxing on one's level of patience because sometimes they'll just keep going and be like, wait, but maybe if I do this, and then it just ends in like a wait loop, which is not a term, but so yeah, basically all I'm going to do right now, as I've not used this before, is just go ahead and tell it to make a file containing some specific thing, if you will. Now, I am not certain if I need to actually go ahead and manually create the file first to allow this to basically have a sandbox to create the code within. So I suppose we'll just kind of go ahead and see what happens here. And this will take a little while to load. This is a 5090 GPU, but it's a mobile 5090, so it is a 24 gigabyte 5090 because it's the mobile. And obviously the thinking was left on as it is thinking right now, and you can already see the wait. Okay, so it's saying first it needs to create a new Python file for this game. Now, I am not sure if this will autonomously go ahead and create the file or if there's some further additional setup that I have neglected to go through, but we'll find out together. Okay, so right as I started to get like, okay, maybe I need to do something here, it's basically seeming like it's asking me to approve creating the retro_Pong Python script. I can toggle on auto approve, which I think for the purpose of this demonstration, we will do that. I don't know that I would recommend that depending on your use case. It says it has created the file. I don't see it reflected here in the actual like window where that would show up, but I'm kind of just going to let this ride as I am getting a feel for this as well. I genuinely have not used this before, so this is my first time in this. I suppose I will say first impressions and things like that if I did want to be more of a like reviewer. I like that this is quite a lightweight interface here with not a lot of different options or settings or anything like that. I've seen some other things like root code and things which seem very feature-packed and in-depth, but I do believe perhaps they could be quite intimidating for a beginner. File path here. Okay, there is. So if I click that, awesome. It did actually go ahead and open it. It is seeing if I want to accept these changes. Obviously, these changes have all been made right now because it is actually writing and generating the script. All right, so we have our script right here. I didn't actually need to do anything. It made this all by itself. It did take a little bit of time, but obviously that would be dependent upon the speed of the model you're running and what hardware, etc. With that, I think, okay, so I can, instead of having to click right here, I seemingly can just hit the happy check mark there, and it will go ahead and do this. So now it is basically just telling me how to go ahead and actually run this, and basically we'll go ahead and do just that. In the extensions tab right here, install Python, and we will trust publisher and install, and then we will then be able to run our code. So I've lost my file, but if I click on it right there, it opens back up. So I will run without debugging. Python debugger. I need to select an interpreter. I do not have Python installed. Again, I don't use Windows for any of this, so this is genuinely, I'm going to leave this in because if you're on Windows and you want to play with some form of like agentic coding, this may actually reflect your experience as well, as I'm not in tune with a lot of this. I predominantly use Linux for these sorts of things. And stuff like this is really a big reason why I opt to use Linux. There we go. All right, so that is the Python interpreter that we just had downloaded. All right, let's see. Cool, very good. So this did correctly do this. Obviously, this is dumb simple, and the whole goal and aspect of something like this, I don't know if talking while playing this is the best idea, but I'm going to try it, and I am controlling both paddles, I should mention, so I cannot lose this game. I can only win this game. But the whole thing about this is actually hooking it up to a code base or something like that, instead of just doing one-shot script generations like this, which does encompass a lot of what sort of testing I like to do. You can actually hook this into a code base and have it make changes across interlinked scripts and things of that sort. So that is why agentic coding IDEs and things like that are so popular, is because they really do accelerate the workflow. Someone who is a bit more archaic or is used to doing things differently, such as myself, may just be used to vibe coding by just pasting these scripts into an LLM, asking for these specific changes, and then going and manually replacing the updated script from within a code base. This is basically the evolution of that. So that is partially why things like this are so popular. So as I am about to win this game as a score of 5-4, I will just go ahead and close it. Basically, we're now going to do something like that, where we pull in a simple code base and then ask this to make changes throughout that entire code base to see how it works and what sort of, I suppose, feedback and things we notice. So being that this is the type of thing you want to test with a code base, I am just using a little tiny chatbot script that I had made for the Jetson Aura Nano, where it is a verbal chatbot that you can just speak to, and it has a little picture and a mouth sprite on screen. So I am using WSL right here to do this, as I'm more familiar with just Linux in general, but I do just want to point that out so there's no confusion if you see this weird looking PowerShell syntax right here. With that, I can basically just go ahead and close that for now, and we will actually go ahead now and open a folder here. So I have navigated to the location of the cloned GitHub repository right here, and I'm just going to select that folder from within Void right here. I will just enable trust right there, where basically just to make sure you trust where the code came from and things like that. So being that this computer is a completely fresh install, it did prompt me to install Git. So basically, I just clicked on the link that it showed right here. It brought me to a website, this website right here, and I just went ahead and ran this in PowerShell, as we can see right here, which went ahead and satisfied that requirement. I do just want to quickly point that out. Depending on your level of expertise with this stuff, it may be prudent to mention. With that, we now have our files, everything, and associated with them opened right here in the left-hand Explorer pane. So basically, I am going to just make this window a bit bigger as well, as we are pretty much just solely going to be focused on this here. Maybe I'll make it like that size. And then basically we can actually see how this functions in a small but code-based scenario. So we have our LLM script right here, where we have Ollama. Maybe that's not something I'll trust one of these models to modify right here, but in the face.py script, this is definitely more simple. It is basically just shows a face on the screen with a simple mouth sprite, which will respond based on the actual sound or speech coming from the LLM. So with that, I am basically going to turn thinking off. You do Control L to add a selection. So basically what that means, from my understanding, is we would go ahead and just select everything that we want this to actually be able to modify, and then type Control L, which adds it all to the chat right here. We can see that lines 1 through 94 are selected, which encompasses the entirety of the script. And then I am basically going to just ask it to make some changes to this. Now, this is definitely more of a simple and general task, which is partially limited by the fact that I'm running this with a local LLM instead of a Frontier Lab model. So I'm just giving it a very simple task here, which is basically to just go ahead and modify some of the math right here so that the mouth sprite is actually a different size than what it is here. This is a relatively simple task, but again, the whole point of this video is kind of just to do a showcase of this Void program and just kind of play with this with a local LLM and see what it's like, as this is more of a new area for me in terms of using some of these AI-powered coding assistants. So basically, we can see right here that it has changed some things. Basically, it's saying, okay, I will modify the scaling factor in the file to make the mouth sprite twice as large, which is basically what I had asked it to do. Okay, it has successfully gone ahead and done this. Now I had set it to auto accept or do something changes, but it does seem like it's still prompting me right here to go ahead and accept the file. So basically I have done that. And the cool thing about that is you can see the old line there as well as the new line when you actually go ahead and accept. And if you do accept, it just kind of makes that change. Now, something interesting here that I would like to note, and I think would be kind of cool, is being that I have multiple LLMs downloaded on this specific machine, if I hit the drop down right here, I can actually just go ahead and swap. So let's say I wanted to switch to Gemma3-27B. I can basically now go ahead and use that model. Now, truthfully, doing this between Gemma3-27B and Qwen3-32B isn't going to produce like a very interesting to see result, but where that comes into play, at least locally, is when using models like the GLM family of models, where they are fantastic at doing aesthetic design. So say you were making a website or something like that and you wanted really good looking front end dev stuff, you could basically use a coding model to do the back end and then swap over to a GLM model or something like that, and then have a really aesthetically pleasing front end made. So this is a really cool feature, just to be able to hot swap. I won't say hot swap because obviously the model would take time to load in and things like that, but it is just really neat. And I guess I kind of see myself beginning to appreciate and like some of like this form of development, I suppose one could say. So I think the last thing I want to try right here, just to wrap this up, is basically I will go up here into the right-hand pane and just make a new chat. I will go ahead into this, say, Ollama integration script, where basically this just handles the chatbot being able to access the LLM that will actually give it the quote-unquote intelligence to speak with you. I will add this to chat and just ask it to put detailed code comments in this entire script. Now, while I do that, I should also make note that there are different selectable options here, where gather, chat, and agent. So chat is basically just as if you were chatting normally with one of these LLMs. You could ask it questions, things like that, but it won't actually make any changes to any of the files here. Gather is kind of in between chat and agent, where, as we can see, it reads files but can't actually edit them. And then of course agent, which we have selected here and have been using throughout the duration of this whole video, will edit files and use tools. So this is really kind of just a simple first look. There's definitely obviously more in-depth and intricate things that this is capable of doing, but as a first simple test, I think that it's cool and does it's simple and very lightweight, which I like very much. So it has added the code comments that I had asked it to, but it's not automatically applying them to this script. So it seems like if I just hit this apply button, it will then go ahead and apply the changes. So then I can approve them with the little check button, I would assume. So it shows us it's running right here, and there we can go. So right there, I'm hands off. It is automatically kind of typing. I guess I will full screen this. And again, we're less worried about how correct any of these changes are or comments, more just focused on the actual functional implementation of this software and watching it work. So this is really badass though, because the thing is, this is all running locally on this machine. So I could turn off internet access, blah, 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 things like that, and it would still function just as this is. And from what the Void website says, this is good for data privacy and keeping your data on your own machine, or things that some folks care about. Obviously verify all claims with that, but okay, I will accept this. And now we have a nice commented Ollama integration file, which is just kind of neat. I mean, even just using this for where like, okay, I cloned this GitHub repository, but I don't necessarily understand all of these scripts. I'm going to have this model basically go through and put code comments in so I can better understand what I'm actually working with before I move further. So stuff like that, which really is quite cool. I guess that is probably going to conclude this video. So, okay, that was not, I didn't mean to be there. That was just when I was looking for the thing. So I will just go ahead and type void, and we likely, oh, all right. So their SEO is pretty locked down if they showed up that high. So that's good. So basically, yeah, this is void. I wanted to do a quick test of it. Truth be told, I needed to test this new computer as well with some decently sized LLMs. And yeah, that's going to wrap today's video up. I will definitely do more videos on agentic coding solutions and things like that. I do very much like this void, and I would like to see this working on Ubuntu or any flavor of Linux. With that, that's going to wrap it up. If you have any questions, please feel free to leave them in the comments, and thanks for watching.